Hello, I'm Jess, the founder of Sallie Tomato, and today we're going to make a water tumbler carrier using my new pattern named Casablanca. This pattern is practical and stylish for staying hydrated and carrying all of your necessities while on the go. Welcome to the Sallie Tomato YouTube channel. If you're new to sewing or like sewing fashion-forward projects, our YouTube channel is the place to be to help you create confidently. Carrying a water bottle has become part of our daily routine, which is why I designed this pattern. So if you need to travel light, you can leave your purse at home and grab this accessory instead. This innovative carry-all is a stylish solution for staying hydrated and carrying essentials. The adjustable strap ensures a comfortable fit whether you're off to the gym, exploring the outdoors, or navigating your daily errands. The lightweight, sturdy design is slim enough to fit inside the cup holder of your car or stroller. The addition of a cell phone and zipper pocket makes this a must-have accessory for an active lifestyle. During this tutorial, you'll learn how to add an optional cotton or canvas main fabric, create a sturdy strap with a comfortable shoulder pad, and create a zipper pocket which is perfect for your cell phone and card case. The finished size is 4.5 inches wide, 9 inches high, and 3 inches deep. The name and design of this pattern was of course inspired by the classic film Casablanca and also staying hydrated in warm climates. Before we get started, be sure to grab a pattern. See the description below this video and follow the link to access the pattern information. We also encourage you to use our retailer locator on our website to find a Sallie Tomato retailer near you. All of the supplies you need are listed on the back of the pattern. The Casablanca is suited well for breathable materials. We highly recommend trying Sallie Tomato Air Mesh for this project, and you can use foam in substitution of the air mesh if you decide to use cotton as your main fabric. So take some time reviewing the back of the pattern and all of the supplies that you need for this project. Then go ahead and cut out all of your pieces according to the pattern, and let's begin. There are several pieces required for this pattern, so let's start by covering all the pieces that you'll need to make this project. Before beginning, be sure to review the recommended fabrics on the back of the pattern cover. Inside the pattern, we've included cutting layouts and also metric cutting instructions. Also, it may be helpful to label your pieces as you cut. You can do so by marking the name of each piece on the wrong side of your fabric with a removable pen or chalk, or you can download the free piece labels sheet from our website, then print and cut out reusable labels that you can either pin or clip to each of your pieces as you cut them out. The main fabric for this pattern is optional. You can choose to use a cotton or a canvas. The main fabric is used for the main panel, the base, the pocket, and the gusset, and also the shoulder pad. Using main fabric allows you to feature a print if you'd like. Otherwise, you can use air mesh on its own. If you decide to use a main fabric, you can use foam as a stabilizer. However, if you decide that you don't want to feature a main fabric, air mesh can be used on its own, but foam stabilizer cannot. The air mesh is designed to be breathable and lightweight. Air mesh is an exclusive material that we've designed that comes in several neutral colors. It is a layer of foam in between two layers of mesh. One side is a patterned side and the other has a mini mesh on the back. As you cut out your pieces, pay attention to the direction of your fabrics if you're using a print, or if you're using air mesh alone, you can choose to use either side as the right side or the wrong side. For this tutorial, I will be adding on a cotton main fabric, so that way you can see all of the steps of the pattern. But if you decide not to use a main fabric, then simply skip over those steps of the instructions. You'll also need some coordinating 1-inch wide webbing for the strap connectors and the pocket connectors. You'll need an 1.5 inch wide webbing for the adjustable strap. I've chosen a coordinating solid. However, you could choose from a variety of designed webbing. We have assorted prints and textures available on our website for a boutique look. It's also fun to create multiple adjustable straps so you can swap out for different styles and occasions. For this particular pattern, I designed the construction technique to use fold over elastic for the binding. However, if you prefer to make your own bias binding out of cotton fabric or purchase pre-made bias binding, you're certainly welcome to create the binding on your own using your desired method and then cut according to the pattern so you have all of the binding pieces that you need. There are a few pieces of binding that are optional. The side binding and the base binding are not recommended to allow the carrier to sit flat and help reduce bulk. If you plan on putting your carrier and your water tumbler in a cup holder in your car, the binding is going to add some extra bulk. However, I've included the measurements in the instructions in case you prefer to have bound edges. I completely understand that it can be a little uncomfortable leaving fabric edges raw. You could alternatively serge the edges if you prefer not to have a raw edge, or use a narrow zigzag stitch along the edges to help prevent some of the fabric edges from fraying, especially if you're using a cotton main fabric. When you're using air mesh, you don't have to worry about fraying edges, so you can leave those edges raw without adding any binding. Later on, when we create the pocket, the inner pocket binding will be optional as well, depending on if you prefer bound edges. If you do not and you're okay with the raw edge on the interior, especially if you're using the air mesh, then that helps save a few steps in the process, and you can skip adding any binding. You'll also need a small piece of hook and loop tape. This will be for the closure. For this project, you will need 2 zippers. I'm using Sallie tomato zippers by the yard. They have a nylon coil with a metallic finish, so the coil appears to be metal, but since it's nylon, you're able to cut and sew through the coil teeth without having to worry about dulling your scissors or breaking a needle while sewing. We have a variety of metal zipper pull options available. For this project, I'm using size number 5 for the pocket zippers. And finally, you'll need some hardware. The hardware is listed on the back side of the pattern. We have a variety of metal finishes available, which all coordinate with our zipper by the yard for a professional look. The first section is optional to attach the main fabric. Position your fabrics with the right sides face up and align all edges of each of your main fabric pieces over the coordinating air mesh or foam pieces. You'll want to align the edges of piece A, B, C, D, E, and F. You can secure the layers together temporarily with temporary basting spray or sewing clips. Once you have your main fabric pieces adhered or clipped together, take each piece over to the sewing machine and baste an 1/8 inch from all edges of each piece. I've lengthened my stitch length to 5 millimeters for the basting. After basting, now is a great time to add any quilting as desired. For this particular print, it would be fun to top stitch along each of the vertical and horizontal lines to add quilting. However, you could add some free motion quilting designs or whatever designs you would like to each of the main fabric pieces. Then you'll repeat the exact same process for remaining pieces B through F. Next, we'll attach the strap connectors. Start by threading one webbing piece G strap connector through each of the D-rings. You can fold the wrong sides of the webbing together so that way the raw ends meet in the center of the underside. You can use sewing pins or clips to hold the strap connector in place. Then repeat for the remaining strap connector and D-ring. Next, with right sides up, position one strap connector in from the left side edge of piece A main panel, making sure that the side of the strap connector and the top folded edge measure according to the pattern for positioning. It's very helpful to work on top of a cutting mat for positioning because you can use the lines of your mat to make sure that the main panel is straight, because otherwise the angled ends can be a little bit deceiving when you're trying to measure in from the leftmost edge. After positioning, top stitch the strap connector in place close to the D-ring and then an 1/8 inch from the remaining edges. If desired, you can top stitch a box with an X through the center just under the D-ring for reinforcement. Next, with right sides up, you'll position the remaining connector in from the rightmost edge according to the pattern. Make sure that the top edge of the strap connector is parallel with the top edge of the main panel. Then you'll top stitch the strap connector in place just like before. Next, we'll attach the hook and loop tape. I've already went ahead and positioned both halves of my hook and loop tape. You'll want to make sure that the right sides are face up and position one half of the hook and loop tape piece Q in from the left side edge and down from the top of the main piece A according to the pattern. Then top stitch an 1/8 inch from all sides of piece Q. After top stitching, you'll position and attach the remaining hook and loop tape piece. However, this time you'll have wrong sides together and center the remaining half of the hook and loop tape in according to the pattern from the right side edge of main panel piece A. To double check that your piece is positioned properly, make sure that you measure down from the topmost edge of piece A and also in from the side edge. Then top stitch an 1/8 inch from all edges of remaining piece Q. Next, we'll attach the elastic binding. If you decided to use pre-made bias binding, you will follow along with the steps, however, attach according to your desired method. With wrong sides together, beginning at the left curved side edge of piece A, you'll want to align elastic piece J, which is your upper binding, along the raw edge so that the center crease of the binding is about an 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge. I'm going to align my elastic as I sew, however you can pin the elastic in place. Over at the machine, we'll top stitch an 1/8 inch from piece A raw edge, aligning piece J as you sew. Continue along the side, around the curve and across the top edge of piece A. Continue around the closure tab. and stop sewing at the right curved side edge. Trim any excess elastic even with the fabric edge. Next, fold the elastic over the raw edge and top stitch an 1/8 inch from the edge of elastic piece J. I do recommend adding sewing clips to ensure that the folded elastic layers stay flat. Next, we'll assemble the main panel. With right sides together, fold piece A in half, aligning the straight side edges. Use some sewing clips to help hold the edges in place and keep them aligned. Then sew together 1/4 inch from the aligned edges, stopping at the bottom edge. If you decide not to add the side binding, you can skip ahead to step 7 of the instructions. If you want to add the elastic piece K to bind the side edge, you'll want to start by folding the top edge of piece K 1/2 inch to the wrong side and top stitch in place. With wrong sides together, align elastic piece K side binding along the raw edges of the seam just sewn, so that way the center crease of the elastic is 1/8 inch from the raw edge. Then fold the binding over the raw edge, add some sewing clips to hold in place, and top stitch 1/8 inch from the edge of the binding. Next, with right sides together, align piece B base to the bottom edges of piece A main panel. Use sewing clips to hold the layers together, then sew together 1/4 inch from aligned edges. If you decided to add the bound edge, fold the raw edges of the side seam to one side. It's easiest to sew this step with the base against the bed of the sewing machine. Now is the ideal time to double check that you caught all of the raw edges in the seam allowance. Now you have to decide if you want to finish off that raw edge or not. And like I mentioned before, you have a few options. You can sew around the base again using a narrow zigzag stitch to help conceal some of those raw edges. Otherwise, if you have a serger, you can serge around the raw edge. With either of those options, or if you decide to leave the edges raw and not add any elastic binding, you can skip ahead to the next section of instructions if you choose not to add elastic piece L. If you'd like to add the elastic binding or your own pre-made binding around the bottom edge, you'll want to follow along with the instructions. Just like before, you'll fold the tail end of elastic piece L wrong sides together with 1/2 inch to the underside and top stitch in place. Keep in mind that the folded top stitch end of the elastic binding will be the tail end of your binding. So beginning with the raw edge of your elastic binding, align wrong sides together with the base, so that way the raw edges are about 1/8 inch from the center crease of the elastic binding. You'll top stitch 1/8 inch all the way around, and once you reach the beginning of your stitching, you'll want to make sure that your binding overlaps the beginning end. So that way, you'll have a nice finished folded edge when you turn your binding over to the opposite side and top stitch 1/8 inch all the way around to secure it in place. This is the same technique that we've been using so far throughout the pattern. I am going to skip adding any elastic binding to my base to help reduce some of the bulk. Next, we'll prepare the front pocket. I've already went ahead and marked a horizontal line down from the top short edge of one pocket piece C according to the pattern. If you decided to use an optional main fabric, you'll want to make sure to do your marking on one of the main fabric pieces C. Then you can take your scissors and cut along the marked line. This will divide the piece into an upper and lower front section. With right sides together, align the short zipper along the bottom edge of the upper front section of cut piece C, positioning the zipper to open or close in your desired direction. Since I am right-handed, I position my zipper to close towards the right, so that way when I am wearing the bag and utilizing the pocket, it will open towards my dominant hand. So you have to visualize how you're going to be wearing the bag and how your pocket will be positioned once it's attached to your carrier. Then sew together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have a very narrow foot attached to my machine, but you'll want to swap out your foot to a zipper foot or a narrow foot, depending on what you have available for this step. After sewing, you'll want to trim the fabric from the seam allowance. Just be careful that you do not trim the zipper. You'll want about 1/8 inch of fabric from the cut edge to your seam. And this will help reduce some of the bulk from your seam allowance. Next, you'll want to finger press the seam towards the upper front section, so that way the zipper tape is flat and that raw edge is encased by the zipper. Then top stitch the upper front section 1/8 inch from the seam. Next, with right sides together, align the raw edge of the zipper along the top edge of the lower front section of the cut piece C. Then sew together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that the metal zipper pull is out of the way as you sew. Then, just like before, trim away the fabric from the seam allowance, being careful not to cut through the zipper tape, and press the seam towards the lower front and top stitch 1/8 inch from the seam. After sewing, trim any excess fabric from the bottom edge so that way the piece measures according to the pattern. Next, with right sides up, center the assembled piece C front over another piece C that has no main fabric attached. Add sewing clips to hold the pieces together, then top stitch 1/8 inch from the outer edges of piece C front. The next section is to assemble the pocket. Start by marking the center of the long zipper, piece D gusset, and the center along each short edge of the pieces C for the pocket. I do this by simply folding each piece in half and marking the center along the fold. For the zipper, I used chalk, and for the fabric pieces, I'm going to use an ink pen so it's easy to see in the tutorial. Plus, by marking along the very raw edge The ink pen will be hidden within the seam allowance. And as a shortcut, I'm going to take my already marked piece C and use that as my guide for marking the remaining piece. Next, we'll want to round the corners of both pocket pieces C. Position the circle template included in the pattern in each corner of both pocket pieces C. Trace the outer edge of the template from edge to edge, and then cut along the marked lines to round each corner. And I like to take shortcuts whenever I can, so I'm going to use one of the pocket pieces that I've already rounded the corners as a template to cut the corners of the remaining pocket piece. Next, with right sides together, align the short raw edges of the zipper with each raw end of piece D gusset. Then sew together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then, with wrong sides together, position one elastic piece P for the gusset binding along each of the short raw edges of piece D gusset so that the center crease of the elastic is about 1/8 inch from the raw edge. Then top stitch 1/8 inch from piece D raw edges. Then fold the binding over the raw edge and top stitch 1/8 inch from the edge of the binding. After sewing, trim the binding ends even with the edges. With right sides together, match the zipper center with the top center of piece C with the pocket. Then match the gusset center with the bottom center on piece C. Align the remaining edges and then sew together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Double check that the zipper opens in the same direction as the pocket zipper. Make sure that the gusset binding is folded down towards the bottom and each of the side seams of the zipper and the gusset are positioned so they are even. And again, I highly recommend using a zipper foot or a narrow foot to help maintain the seam allowance as you sew. Make sure to move the zipper pulls out of the way as you sew. After sewing, snip the corners of the zipper tape to help the zipper tape lay flat. If you choose not to add the elastic binding to the outer edges of the pocket and leave the edges raw or use one of the techniques from before, then you can go ahead and skip to step 10 of the instructions. If you decide to add the elastic binding piece M for the pocket binding, with wrong sides together, you'll fold the tail end of the binding 1/2 inch to the wrong side and top stitch. Then, with wrong sides together, align the raw end of the binding along the raw edges of piece C, so that way there's about 1/8 of an inch between the raw edge and the center crease of the elastic. Top stitch 1/8 inch from piece C raw edge. As you sew all the way around, you'll want the tail end of the binding to overlap the starting point at the end of the seam. Make sure to backstitch. Next, fold the binding over the raw edge and top stitch an 1/8 inch from the edge of binding. Next, take your 2 swivel hooks and both of your webbing piece H for the pocket connectors. Thread each webbing piece through a 1-inch swivel hook, and with wrong sides together, fold each piece in half, matching the raw ends. With right sides up, position 1 pocket connector down from the top edge of the remaining piece C according to the pattern. Make sure to align the raw edges. Then top stitch a 1/4 inch from the raw edges of each connector, making sure to backstitch. I like to backstitch several times for reinforcement. Next, repeat steps 6 through 9 in the pattern to attach the back piece C with the swivel hooks at the top. I'm going to skip adding elastic to the back side of the pocket since I demonstrated the process for the front side of the pocket. I prefer leaving the edge raw, and I will go back and add a zigzag stitch or serger stitch around the outer edges to help clean up those edges a little bit. After sewing, turn the assembled pocket right side out. Also turn the carrier right side out. Then you can attach the pocket swivel hooks to the carrier D-rings. Next, we'll assemble the shoulder pad. Start by finding piece E, which is shoulder pad A, and both of your elastic piece N, which is the binding for shoulder pad A. You'll want to align 1 piece of binding at each short raw edge of piece E, so that way the center crease of the elastic binding is about 1/8 of an inch from the raw short edge. And we're going to take this to the machine and top stitch with an 1/8 inch seam allowance from the raw edge. Then fold the binding over the raw edge and top stitch an 1/8 inch from the edge of the binding. Next, with wrong sides together, center piece E over piece F, aligning the long edges. Baste an 1/8 inch from the raw edges of piece E. Shape each corner of the shoulder pad using the circle template. After shaping, we'll add piece O. With wrong sides together, fold the tail end of the pocket binding 1/2 inch to the underside and top stitch in place. Beginning near the center of the shoulder pad, Position the elastic wrong sides together and align the center crease of the elastic along the raw edge of piece F, which is your shoulder pad. I'm going to align as I sew, but you could certainly pin the elastic in place. Then top stitch an 1/8 inch from piece F raw edge. Keep in mind when you initially position the elastic on the shoulder pad, you can have the elastic on the underside or the top side, whichever direction you prefer your shoulder pad to be facing up, either with pad A or B on the top. It's completely up to you. Keep in mind that the underside will have 2 rows of top stitching. After initially attaching the binding, fold the binding over the raw edge and top stitch an 1/8 inch from the edge of the binding. I've already went ahead and completed the adjustable strap. If you'd like to see a step-by-step tutorial on how to create an adjustable strap using webbing, visit our YouTube channel for a tutorial. Once your strap is complete with the right sides up, thread the end through the assembled shoulder pad, then through the remaining swivel hook. Repeat the previous steps in the pattern to secure the strap end to itself. Then you can attach the swivel hooks of the adjustable strap to the D-rings on your carrier and add your favorite water tumbler, and you're all set to stay hydrated on the go. Thank you so much for watching this video and perhaps even sewing along with me. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the Casablanca pattern. And if you have any other questions or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. We would love to see your project. Please share and show off your photos using hashtag SallieTomato and hashtag Casablanca bag on social media so we can see it. If you like this video, we would love for you to give it a thumbs up, and we hope that you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a creative day, and I will see you next time.